Hello everyone and welcome to our next session, Why Everyone Should Have a Mentor, Yes, Even CEOs. Now it's well documented the value of mentoring in business, but the pandemic has made mentoring even more important than ever before. So how do you go about finding a mentor? How can it help and what sort of mentor would work for you? And how do you become a mentor? And why reverse mentoring is the new business secret weapon every CEO should have. I'd like to welcome to the studio David Butler, CEO of Crew Clothing, and mentee Kirsty Glynn, founder of Well Cool Clothing, Brook-Carter, the CEO of the Retail Trust, and joining through video is Hannah Nakane, Strategic Partnership Manager at Pinterest. A huge warm welcome to you all. Thank you so much for joining us. So, to kick off our discussion today, I'm actually going to come to yourself first, Kirsty, because Kirsty, you are one of the mentees on the Retail Trust's Elevator Mentoring Programme, and David is your mentor. You've been matched for a little just over a year now. It would be great if you could share with us what prompted you to reach out for a mentor, and how has the mentoring you have in place with David, how has that helped you over the past year?
Okay, I decided to reach out for a mentor. I needed help. I had developed the children's range and taken it to market, but in a very small capacity. And during that time, I'd been working for a couple of years, along with some, very good people to develop the range for the adult market. Mm-hmm. And when I realised the potential or the scope, I decided that I'm from a nursing background, and I really needed somebody to help with strong business acumen and also with a background in retail. And that's what prompted me to reach out for a mentor. Yeah.
And how has David specifically helped you over the past year?
He's been amazing, actually. I've been approached. The company's it's very, small, but it's beginning to grow. And I was approached by another charity. They sell on a small basis, and they shop at Great Ormond Street Hospital. But I've also been approached by another charity, and I needed help to negotiate with them before they took them on. So I was able to talk with David and meet with David, and he gave me advice. And also I've been approached via social media as well. Mm-hmm. And I think he knows if it's something I want a relatively quick response, I'll talk to Megan, and she'll always get to him. And then if it's something that can wait, I'll email. But I always get a great response.
Brilliant. Well, it sounds like you're making good progress with your business, so that's really great. And David, what wonderful words there from Kirsty. And I wonder, do you actually get value out of the mentoring relationship as well? Have you learned anything from Kirsty?
Yeah, absolutely. The one thing when you've got a position such as mine, you can always get tied up in bureaucracy or admin or politics or the bigger aspects of running a business, and you kind of lose sight sometimes of what the actual main purpose is, which is to try and understand what your customer wants, understand what your shareholders and your investors want, and how you actually deliver that. And I think the one thing I've learned with Kirsty on this process so far is that the more and more that you keep focused on what exactly the customer is and the product is, it allows you to keep the reality of what you're trying to do live. Mm-hmm. So it's helped me enormously. It brings me down to earth sometimes, because one minute I'll be talking to a shareholder or an investor about investing millions. The next minute I'll be talking to Kirsty about how to maybe find a supplier to build some samples for her to get her product to market in a way that's as commercial as possible. So yeah, very much so.
Great. And in consideration of the last year of the pandemic, do you think that you've had to change your approach to mentoring in any way over the past year?
No, I wouldn't say we've changed it massively. Obviously, the method of communication is different because we used to try and meet up maybe every quarter or face to face, whether it's in our office or near Kirsty's business. But that applies to everything. That's not just for this particular facet. But I think the one thing it has allowed us to do is actually to understand each other and work a bit more closely together, because the very nature of the pandemic has meant I've had to operate our business differently to how I used to do it before, by working, you know, via video link with people at every department in every aspect of the company to understand what's going on. So, you know, even to the point where I'm talking to suppliers about certain products which I would not normally have had to do, that's then had a benefit to how we've looked at things with products and with marketing and social media. So in a bizarre sort of way, I actually say it's actually ended up working for us, because we've been able to relate to things slightly differently and better than we had before.
Great, good. And Chris and Hannah, I'll come to you both next, because you actually have in place a reverse mentoring relationship, which is a slightly different dynamic as to how people would typically see a mentor and a mentee relationship. I wonder if you could each just explain your role as part of that relationship. Chris?
So Hannah and I worked together for a number of years, and I think the initial outset of our sort of professional relationship, I was probably mentoring her a little bit more as I stepped into the new role, but actually also towards the end of in my last position at Retail Week, but certainly as I stepped into this new role, realised that my ability to communicate, in particular with a large audience, and try and talk about quite often some sensitive issues that we deal with at the trust. I had knowledge gaps, skills gaps. I had a certain perspective on things that weren't always necessarily as up to date as they needed to be. And I think it grew quite naturally. I don't think we actually ever sort of sat down and said, right, let's flip this and reverse mentor. Actually, when we started writing this session, I think that was one of the moments I reflected and said, you know what, I think this is what Hannah and our relationship looks like. I'm able just to call Hannah and talk things through. David's mentioned it. There's no doubt Hannah keeps me very down to earth, and makes sure that, you know, I'm able to ask her inner thing about, look, how should I approach something like this? How do I communicate with people younger than me? How do I communicate with people from different ethnic backgrounds from myself? How do I make sure that the way that I'm approaching things is relevant to a lot of the younger people that are in our organisation that I need to engage with emotionally? And Hannah's perspective is always very helpful, and it's a place to go that I trust, to have sometimes difficult conversations and admit honestly that I maybe don't know how to approach something in the first instance.
Yeah, great. What about yourself there, Hannah? What role do you play?
I think it's really interesting, like Chris said, it's having that dynamic where there's not really anything that's off the table. Like, if I need to be quite honest and say, that wouldn't appeal to someone in my age on social media, you know, why don't you try this? And actually, Chris doesn't look at it as a sense of, I'm criticising what the company's done or anything like that. It's more that I genuinely want the best for him in his career. And it's so interesting how he says the dynamic has switched, because we started off that Chris was my mentor because I aspired to be him. So to now think that he comes to me for guidance and advice, I think it's just really nice to know that in a senior position of power and with so much opportunity that he can influence, to know that he wants to make sure that he's approaching things in the right way, or to make sure that he's considering different communities or different age groups, or, you know, however you identify yourself. Chris wants to make sure that everything he does at the Retail Trust is reflective and inclusive of those things. And I think it's brilliant to think that he's not afraid to call me and say, do you think this looks naff? Or, do you think we should see this? And I'm like, yeah, it's fine to say that. Like, don't be scared. It's absolutely fine. And I think just having that honesty between the two of us means I really do always want the best of what he's able to produce and how the business can work. And the same for when I want advice and I think, oh, I don't really know what to do with this. And even when I made the decision to apply for the job at Pinterest, and I went to Chris and was like, help me. What do I do? I mean, he's always very approachable. And I think that's what makes him a very good CEO, that, you know, he's willing to say, I don't know these areas, and actually it's okay to go to someone who is less senior and younger and ask them those questions for the better and greater good of the business.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, it sounds like you've got a fantastic relationship in place. And Hannah, just picking up what you said there, you said applying for your current role that you're in. I wonder, is that a result of the mentoring? Has the mentoring actually helped you to develop professionally in your career?
Massively. I think when Chris and I first met, I was just this loud-mouthed girl that was like running around the office, didn't really know what was going on. I thought I'd be good at sales, and I wasn't sure what direction I wanted to go. And very quickly, I got to a position where I was having to talk to C-suite members of the business all the time. And I honestly would talk to them like they were my friend. I wouldn't really know what the difference was or how to approach it. And I would tell them information that I would think would be relevant, but it's not really probably what a CEO ever needed to hear or cared about. So Chris taught me a lot about, he used to always ask me not to tell him anything that was going positively, but what was the risk and what was I going to do to fix the risk? Because that's all he needed to know in a snapshot. And I think he's really helped me to be able to have difficult conversations and important conversations with very senior people who have short time, who need to know important things and not necessarily about what I did on my weekend prior to it. So I think he's definitely helped me to work out how to navigate senior levels. And I definitely think that helped me in getting my job and where I am now today, 100%.
Brilliant. Great. And Chris, just thinking about having a mentor at a senior level, in given your role as a CEO, how exactly do you go about finding that mentor at a senior level?
So I think with all these things, it's really is horses for courses. And look, I'm delighted that these guys are joining us and having gone through a formal mentoring program. For me, I've tried those things and it's not worked for me in that aspect, in that I didn't end up matched with someone that I clicked with. I think the important thing from a personal point of view is that I really need to trust the person and know them for a long time before I'm able to enter into a mentoring relationship, either one with Hannah or whichever way the mentoring is going. So for me, it was about finding people that I knew and trusted, so that I could be really, really honest about what I was struggling with. But I know that there are other people, and this is this is a great example where a program has worked out really, really well for them. So I think if people are out there are considering either becoming a mentor or seeking for a mentor, I think it's about asking yourself, look, what's going to work for you? Because I don't think there's just one way to go about finding a mentoring relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. And David, being a CEO yourself, do you have a mentor, or have there been people that have helped you throughout your career you would consider as mentors?
Actually, no, which is part of the reason why I was so keen to try and help the Retail Trust and help Kirsty in this process, because part of the challenge of being a mentee is the fact you don't necessarily know what you don't know. And it's only when you have the option to speak to people that have maybe been through it or have failed already, and then sort of had to work their way back through whatever situation it is, that you can then get the benefit of working with somebody. So look, I've got 2 or 3 people I trust implicitly that I can call or meet for a beer in the good old days. And talk about different situations, but I wouldn't necessarily call them an official mentor, so to speak, which is why I was very keen to try and support this process and obviously to try and help Kirsty along the way in whichever way she wants to go forward. Yeah,
absolutely. And one area I want to touch on is why mentoring is now more important than ever before as a result of the pandemic. Kirsty, what would you say to those that perhaps are watching who are considering thinking of reaching out and getting a mentor? What would your recommendation to them to actually take the next step and do that?
I haven't looked back since I actually reached out, and I only wish I'd done it earlier. It would just save me probably a lot of time, probably a lot more mistakes. But that's only in hindsight that you see that. And I would say, go for it. I Googled, and that was what happened. The Retail Trust came up, and I remember because there was an image on the the screen, and it was a boy that had been in treatment, and the Retail Trust were helping them. And I thought, oh, that's why I want to go with the Retail Trust, and of course that's where I made contact. So yeah, don't hesitate. By all means, you've got nothing to lose. Go for it and grab the opportunity, absolutely. And of course, getting a mentor is one thing, but getting a mentor that is actually right for you is another. Hannah, again, for those that are watching, how do you go about getting the mentor that is exactly right for you?
I think it really has to be someone you aspire to be. So whether that's because you aspire to have their business attribute or the way they have, amazing personal speaking skills, whatever that may be, I think is really important to see a bit of yourself or a skill set that you would like to learn from that person. But also, I think it's really okay, and I do say this a lot, but it's really okay to admit if a mentor isn't working for you. There's nothing wrong with it. So I have multiple mentors, and I've had Chris for the longest, and we have such a great relationship. But I don't think if either of us stopped gaining value, I don't think either of us would be upset in knowing, okay, we've helped each other so much extensively to this point. And it's all right to say, either this isn't a fit, or actually you've helped me now and I've achieved what I needed to achieve in being a partner with you in a mentorship. And so for me, I think it's definitely a case of looking to aspire to have a quality they have, but also being okay with saying maybe this isn't working or it needs to shift in X direction or Y, to make sure you really get the value out of it.
I think it's also just picking up. I agree with what everyone's just said. I also think it's really important to look for someone that is not going to be afraid to tell you you're wrong, or offer a different point of view. I think particularly, and David, I'm sure can emphasise, particularly when you become a CEO, it's really easy to surround yourself with people who just want to say yes to you. Yeah. Or who want to agree with you because it's just easy. And I'm really, really conscious of that getting a different opinion, getting a perspective that is not similar to yourself. So don't surround yourself with people that look like you, act like you, come from the same sort of background as yourself. Make sure you've got people around you who think differently, and who can offer a very different point of view is really important. And I think the great mentorships, and this is obviously clearly one as well, which is fantastic, is where the skill set and the viewpoint complement each other because they're different, and you're each adding something different to the dynamic as well. So I would encourage people that the comfortable thing is to find a mentor that feels very comfortable and looks and it sounds and acts like you, because it's a friendship, and that's not what this is about. It's about gaining something that's different from what you're already bringing to the table. Yeah,
no, really valuable point there, Chris. And just building upon that, David, from the employer's side, as a leader of an organisation with thousands of employees, why should businesses invest in mentoring programmes for their employees? What's your view on that?
Well, because I think, look, the world is very, very competitive, not just retail, but online, the way it's changing, the way it's developing. And, if you go through the old, in inverted commas, traditional way of trying to bring people up through the ranks, you will inevitably push people down a route, as Chris said, of just becoming, robots of what you have historically been. The mentoring side of it is essentially to let people be what they want to be, and try and do that within the framework and the parameters of what the company is. So, my job within Crew and with helping Kirsty is not to try and make them something. It's trying to make them be, hopefully, a more rounded, a better person, a better version of what they're trying to be, rather than be what I want them to be. That isn't the objective. I'm literally trying to help Kirsty not make the mistakes I made over the years, and it's exactly the same with the people within Crew. So, so that ultimately is what we're trying to do in the best way that we can.
Yeah, and just conscious of time there, but Chris, again, as a business leader, why should businesses invest in mentoring? What is that value for the organisation and their people? Why should it be done?
Well, I think all of us fundamentally believe that the greatest assets within the organisation are the people that we employ, and I think that what mentoring does is just it's yet another way, a fantastic way of developing your people. And I also think that these relationships work particularly well when it's a mentor outside of the organisation, because again, it just adds another perspective towards your people, so that you don't get that kind of groupthink mentality, and having access to fresh ideas for individuals, having someone that they can trust to at times offload on, ask advice that you might not want to ask someone within the organisation, I think can be incredibly valuable and helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've only got time for one last final question, but Kirsty, what's next for you? Do you think you'll become a mentor?
Further down the line, yes, I'd love to be, but I've still got a little bit of my journey to go, so I'm not quite ready yet. But yeah, I wouldn't hesitate. Great. Fantastic. Well, that brings us to the end of our session. A huge thank you to all. Really great thoughts, expertise and advice. And for anyone watching that is thinking of reaching out to get a mentor or become a mentor themselves, then please do check out the Retail Trust Elevator Mentoring Programme. All information is on our website, www.retailtrust.org.uk, and we might be able to help you. Thank you very much.